Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Arthur Miller's incredible play, The Crucible. And we're not just looking at what happened during the Salem witch trials back in 1692. No, we're trying to figure out the why. We're going to dissect the anatomy of a witch hunt.
All right, let's jump right in with a quote from Arthur Miller himself. He said, "The tragedy of Salem was the product of a paradox." And honestly, that one line, it sets up the entire conflict for us. Think about it, a paradox. How on earth could something so unbelievably destructive come from something that was meant to be good?
So here's Miller's big idea. Salem's downfall came from the very system they built to protect themselves. You see, they had this super strict theocracy. Basically, the church was the government. And it was all designed to keep order, to keep everyone safe and on the same page. But it was just so rigid, It had no give. And when something can't bend, well, it breaks. And this whole thing, it wasn't just about religion. Miller says it was more like a collective panic attack. The old, super strict rules were starting to come apart at the seams. People were starting to think more for themselves. That idea of individual freedom was creeping in. And the people in charge, they freaked out. The witch hunt became this absolutely terrifying, twisted way for them to grab the reins and reassert control. Okay, so if we're going to understand the explosion, we have to look at the powder keg first. Right? What was life actually like in Salem back in 1692? I'll tell you what it was. A society just simmering with suspicion. Just try to picture this for a second. You're living in a community that's under this insane, constant pressure. There's no theater, you don't even celebrate Christmas, no vain pleasures allowed. And your neighbors? Oh, they're definitely minding your business. Everyone is watching everyone. Then, right at the edge of town, there's this huge, dark forest that you genuinely believe is the devil's last stronghold on Earth. And to top it all off, you believe your little town is the candle that's going to light up the whole world. So any little mistake, any crack in that perfect unity feels like a massive win for evil. There was literally no healthy way to let off steam.
And then the trials. They offered this really twisted opportunity. Miller points out that all of a sudden it wasn't just okay to voice your deepest, darkest resentments, it was seen as holy, even patriotic. You know that neighbor you've had a grudge against for years over a piece of land? Or that old family feud? Or just plain jealousy? Well, now you could settle the score. And the best part? You weren't just being petty. No, you were fighting on the side of God against the devil. You could totally destroy someone's life and feel like a saint while doing it.
So you've got all this pressure building and building. How does it finally blow? Well, every fire needs a spark, right? And for Salem, that spark was ignited in the woods right outside of town. This whole thing really kicks off in the home of the town's minister, Reverend Samuel Parris. Now, you'd think this guy would be the voice of calm and reason in a crisis, but nope.
Yeah, Parris is not a popular guy. Miller describes him as deeply paranoid, totally insecure, and obsessed with his reputation, his salary, and all the enemies he thinks he has. Get this, he'd get insulted if someone just got up to shut a door without asking his permission first. He feels like everyone is out to get him, and that paranoia, it's a huge, huge factor in what's about to happen.
And here it is, the spark. Parris catches his daughter Betty, his niece Abigail, and a bunch of other girls dancing in the forest, which is a huge no-no. One of them was even naked. Then his daughter falls into this weird catatonic state. And what's Parris's first thought? Not, oh no, my daughter is sick. It's, oh no, my reputation is ruined. For a guy like him, this isn't a family problem. It's a political disaster. He's convinced his enemies are going to use this to tear him down. So a little spark of panic is one thing, but to turn it into a raging inferno, you need fuel. And this is where we see the toxic math play out. You take that simmering fear, you add a golden opportunity for people to get what they want, and what do you get? Mass hysteria. And believe me, Salem had plenty of fuel just lying around. And that brings us to Thomas Putnam. He's a rich landowner, and he is seriously bitter. If Parris is all about saving his own skin, Putnam is all about greed and getting revenge. Miller tells us Putnam's vindictive nature was well known long before any talk of witchcraft. In fact, a lot of the eventual accusations are actually in his handwriting. He's a total opportunist. He sees this whole crisis as the perfect chance to settle old scores and, get this, accuse his neighbors so he can snap up their land when they're convicted. It's brilliant and just awful. And then there's his wife, Anne Putnam. She's the one providing the emotional kindling for this fire.
This poor woman has lost 7 babies, she's just drowning in grief and superstition, and she's desperate for someone to blame. Anyone. In fact, she's the one who sent her own daughter into the woods that night to try and conjure the spirits of her dead siblings. She's looking for a supernatural cause, and she's about to find one.
Okay, but right at the dead center of this whole storm, the eye of the hurricane, is Reverend Paris's niece, a teenager named Abigail Williams. Miller describes her as a strikingly beautiful girl with an endless capacity for dissembling. Basically, she's a fantastic liar. And Abigail? She's the engine driving this whole mess, and her motivation has nothing to do with the devil. See, she had an affair with a farmer, John Proctor. When his wife, Elizabeth, found out, she kicked Abigail out. So now, Abigail's main goal is to get Elizabeth Proctor out of the picture so she can have John all to herself.
So you see how it's all coming together? We've got all these simmering tensions, these really intense personal motives, and it's all about to explode into official, deadly accusations. The stage is set, the players are all in their positions, and the curtain is about to go up on absolute chaos.
And then Reverend Hale shows up. He's an expert on the invisible world from a nearby town, and he is so proud that his unique knowledge is finally being called for. He's supposed to be the voice of reason, the outside authority, but instead of calming things down, he basically pours gasoline on the fire. He arrives with all these heavy books, totally convinced he's there to fight a real, scholarly battle against Satan, and with the best intentions in the world, he ends up validating the town's absolute worst fears.
So Hale starts asking questions, and the pressure builds, and all eyes turn to the person at the very bottom of the social ladder, Paris's slave, Tituba. She's from Barbados. She was in the woods with the girls, and she's the easiest target. Paris, terrified for his own neck, screams at her, "You will confess yourself, or I will take you out and whip you to your death." I mean, what do? She's cornered, she's terrified, she's being threatened with being whipped to death, so she does the only thing she can to survive. She realizes that denying it is a death sentence. The only way out is to confess, to tell them exactly what they're dying to hear.
And so she does. She starts talking about the devil coming to her. She tells them he said, "Look, I have white people belong to me." And when they press her for names, she gives them names. Goody Good, Goody Osborne. It's a coerced confession, of course, but it's the proof they've been waiting for. Suddenly, it's not just suspicion anymore, it's a fact. The hunt is officially on.
Now, Abigail Williams is watching all this go down, and she's smart. She sees Tituba save her own life by confessing and pointing fingers, and in that instant, she gets it. She understands the game. In this incredible moment, she completely flips the script. She goes from being a sinner who's about to get in huge trouble to a holy messenger of God.
She screams, "I saw Sarah Good with the devil!" And then, wouldn't you know it, Betty Paris, the kid who's been lying in bed like a zombie, miraculously sits up and joins right in. "I saw Goody Osborne with the devil!" The hysteria just becomes contagious. It's like a tidal wave. The accusations start flying, one after another, as all the girls get caught up in it, pointing fingers and deciding who lives and who dies.
And that really brings us to Miller's final, unsettling point. The play isn't just a history lesson about 1692. It's about us, now. It's about how any society, at any time, deals with fear. He leaves us with this timeless question. The balance has yet to be struck between order and freedom. How do we protect ourselves from threats, whether they're real or just imagined, without crushing the very freedoms we claim to be defending? That is the paradox of Salem. And man, it is a question we are still struggling with today.